guess I didn't really prepare a presentation per se. We've been through discussions on the building substantially over the last quite a few months. But I wanted to answer any questions. I did prepare this briefing sheet for you. Some of the information on here is stuff you've seen before. Some of it was presented a little bit differently than you've seen it in the past. I don't know how you would like me to just run down through some of these key points on here, or the existing building, landfill, was built in the 70s, early 70s. As I've stated in the past, with a May 2009 vertical expansion approval we got from the EPA, which is now a permit to install we operate on, included moving the building. The original plan was about 2013 that the building was to be removed so we could start construction of the confluence for the stormwater, that is behind the building that actually will impact the building and also eliminates use of the existing scale because the roadway will not work once that starts. That work has been delayed until now. It must be done in 2015. If we don't start in 2015, that work, we're going to run out of landfill space that's certified and ready to go. So we are at a crunch point at this point in time. A decision has to be made. We have to move forward here shortly. So that next year, in June timeframe, when we start construction, the building is out of the way, or we're out of the building is out of the way, and we can start work on the confluence. Benefits of the new project. We're ending up with a new scale, 80-foot scale that can handle semi-trucks, which will allow us to bring in larger quantities of outside waste. All of the staff that report to the sanitary engineer are going to be in the same building. That will do several things from a management standpoint, but one, you don't end up with isolation. Right now, a lot of things happen at times that I don't know what's going on because I'm not at the landfill. If David gets in the middle of something hot and heavy, emergency comes up, he might forget to call me until he's well into it, and I should have known about it earlier. It's just a general communication issue that develops. We'll have a new entrance drive that will be located at a better position on the highway for sight distances for entry and exit out of the facility. That will also help us should we start getting any semi-truck traffic into the landfill or larger vehicles. A big item is we'll have adequate space to properly store the drawings and documents that we have to maintain for the landfill as well as the sewer districts. EPA has already, in the latest notice of violation that I think you guys received it last week up here, and possibly the week before. They're already done this for our records not being kept in a manner that they find acceptable. It's worked for us for years. Not well, but it's worked. But it's piles of drawings, it's tubs of drawings that are rolled up. If you need something, don't count on finding it for 10 or 15 minutes while you dig through and sort. They don't find that acceptable when they come down and ask you, oh, we want to see this, which they have every right to ask when they come to inspect. We know we have it, but it takes a little time. They want us to be able to go right here, open to a sheet, here it is. We just don't have the space for the files to be laid out in a proper manner for that. Obviously, the maintenance facility will be sized for the equipment that we have. It won't be sized for a pickup truck, which is what we have right now. Cost-wise, the original project was estimated $1.7 million. as explained in that product when that estimate was given, that was a high number. It was purposefully a high number. Some of the things that are driving costs of the building, it will meet building codes and ADA requirements as required for a public facility. Costs are also based on prevailing wages, and the latest price we have is based on a quote we received from the state firm bid for building construction, which information is in the sheet there. I've given you, breaking down the cost estimate a little differently than I have presented it in the past. I have taken the discounts out before I gave you the numbers, and there was a discount number at the end. I've taken the discounts off where they're appropriate. The building itself, which is the administrative, the maintenance facility, $800,000 in round numbers. That is everything within 5 feet of the exterior of the building. That, on top of that, then you have to add the site work by landfill staff of $100,000, give or take, hopefully less. Entrance drive paving, almost $250,000, $242,000. The new scale, $81,000 in round numbers. Utilities to the building, nearly $60,000. For a grand total, or a subtotal for that of $1.282651. Then I do have contingencies on here. General engineering, $25,000, of which we spent about $12,000 to date, and a contingency of 5% for another $64,000, giving a total of $1,371,651. Now, just for some comparison, I took a look at some of the other buildings in the county. The value of the administrative area within this building, of that $800,000, about $408,000 is the administrative area. So the offices, the shower, or not the shower, the restrooms, the scale office area, about 3,600 square feet. We've got 10 employees in there. That generates 360 square foot per person, and an approximate cost per square foot of $113 per square foot. Engineer's office, valued at $740,000, 6,300 square feet. Number of employees that work out of that office continuously is 13, which generates 485 square foot per person. Their cost is about $118 a square foot. That one is not a completely fair comparison. Part of that square footage is some assembly area for his entire crew. But it is somewhat reflective of the fact that he has large volumes of drawings to keep track of. He's got plotters, he's got CAD stations. Those take up a lot of space. The other one I've got on here is the JFS facility, $2.3 million, 16,500 square feet, approximately 53 employees in that area, 311 square feet per person. Cost per square foot, about $142. Now, one of the advantages and reasons that JFS would be lower than the landfill, because you've got more people in there, the restroom areas get divided out over more people, which helps lower the square foot. Plus, they have a lot of people that are in workstations, highly congested or tightly packed areas. That helps to lower the square foot per person. But they're still over 300 square foot a person. Did some quick numbers this morning. Just for example, your office is here, excluding this room. You guys have about 282 square foot per person. That's with 7 people in these offices. And what you're missing here you start to do those calculations, you don't have 2 restrooms. You don't have a lunchroom or a break area. You do have quite a bit of file storage, which would be comparable to what we would need at the landfill. So that number needs to go upwards and would approach, if you had a break room and another restroom, you would start to approach or be at about 300 square foot per person, or maybe over, since you're only dividing by 7. Total landfill building cost, just take the entire building, $72 a square foot. That includes the maintenance and the, we call it the lean-to, it's not really a lean-to, but the unheated, unconditioned moved area. As far as financing, we've been through that to some extent, but one item that's on here that I'm not sure has been shared much in the past is the 2011 rate increase for assessments and tipping fees. It included an estimate for the majority of the expense that we've reported for this building. That was built into the rates to build a new facility. The number I have found in the records was about $900,000. That was intended to be just a building. We have added on the site work that involves the new driveway, the new entrance. So there is some addition to that that they didn't think about when they put together that $900,000 number initially. And then I have included various bond financing issues. As we had talked a week and a half ago about how to refinance or how to finance this, what that would mean to our budget. Recommendation would be to refinance the 2015-2016 capital bond payments that are currently on the books, along with the bond issue for the new building and facilities. And we would result in savings of about $230,000 for in the first 2 years. And obviously, it's not a savings after that, but it gives us a short-term savings of $230,000 minimum. And in other considerations, I know we talked in the past, over the past year probably, with House Bill 592. One of the issues is they want to make it much harder for solid waste districts to retain or have flow control. The only acceptable reason that seems to be floating around to have flow control is protection of public debt. When we pay off the current capital fund debt, the only debt we have at this point is $75,000 a year for the leachate. I know debt is not really considered a good business practice. Flip side of it is the more we have, if they change the rules, the better our argument is to keep flow control. And if we don't have flow control, the landfill goes out of business. Unless we do a drastic change in the rates, and we have to upset the apple cart as far as the way things are done within the waste industry right now to be able to accomplish that. It may be, if we lose flow control and we cannot attract additional waste from outside the county, we got to look at $30 million to close the facility. So if we're going to stay in business, we need to make sure that flow control stays in place.
Randy, with the next phase or next expansion of the landfill, with that, how much are you looking at bonding there? And what would that be?
The bonding for that to expand the landfill, I don't remember that number.
You mean expanded council footprint that we currently have?
The next phase that he's looking at.
Aren't we more concerned that we are trying to keep it, pay for what we currently have, rather than speed
Well,
up
just
and
he
expand?
said it's good to stay in debt, so that's what I was asking.
That's what he said.
And absolutely, at this point, let's see if I can figure out the number here. I am not finding it quickly, Commissioner. I do know we had talked about $450,000 roughly for the expansion, for the engineering for the expansion. But I don't remember what the cost was to actually do the construction. And there was a $450,000 tipper also included in those numbers if we were going after large amounts of transfer roads.
But the dollar you're talking about would be when?
Well, that is dependent upon when we decide to expand, make that move. My recommendation is to do it now, but I know there is some hesitancy on the Commission's part to do that. But I believe it would probably be a good move for the county to make. One, the expansion allows us to reduce our rates. I know that sounds silly, but it would allow us to reduce our rates and make it more attractive to bring in additional waste from out of county. I do know that Montgomery County is interested in talking to us about that. And those early discussions, it kind of looks like we're 2 years out from when they could come. And until we can be ready for them. Now, the debt would have to occur before that. In order to get the expansion made. But I guess another side of that is we have already spent a portion of that $450,000 this year out of our budget to deal with the wetland issue. So it's not $450 anymore, it's going to be a little less. Maybe under $400,000, but yes, those numbers are coming in the future.
Randy, didn't you recently tell us that if we didn't bring in more trash from Allen County, if we don't start getting more trash into our landfill, that there was potential that we would have to raise our assessment again?
Correct. Rates or assessments, yes.
And or probably both, maybe.
Possibly, yes.
So how's it going so far? Since September 1st was our first day of the new rates, right? Is that correct?
Correct.
Has there been any impact?
Impact, no. We've probably gotten a dozen loads. I don't want to overstate it, David.
We're starting to see some haulers, Judge Jarros being one of them, has started to bring his out-of-county stuff to put, to us, which just started last week. But he's trying to keep as much as he can, as long as it's cost effective for him. He wants to keep his money in county, so this is good for us.
So it is off to a very slow start. Part of that is the rate is not attractive enough yet.
But we have no guarantee that we're ever going to be self-sustaining down there. We have no guarantee that we're ever going to get enough outside trash to sustain the landfill.
By sustaining, you need to eliminate the assessment?
Or not raise it. Let's
Um,
just go with that, picture.
Well, the refinancing and building a new building, and I know this sounds crazy, but we end up with a $230,000 a year savings for the next 2 years. That's a reduction in our current cost of the budget for debt.
Okay, then what happens after the 2 years?
Well, our debt load is still $230,000 a year lower than it is today.
We've just spread the debt out.
You're
into the
correct. We
future.
have spread the debt out, but that allows us to spend the money that we have in a better manner. It allows us to then reduce our rates because we don't have that money we have to cover. We can lower the rate for outside of county waste and start bringing more in. It's a chicken and the egg problem.
But
I
we
will
could
admit
do
to
this
that.
with a less expensive building. We could do all of this with a less expensive building.
I would ask you, where can I cut costs?
Well, I thought you brought us a spreadsheet of all of our options.
And none of those options are good, and none of them save us much money. That is my problem.
Well,
That's the problem. They
saving
don't-
money, going into debt to save money is not a good business plan to me.
Well, yes, I understand your concern. Let me explain my approach. When I talk to these people about our building, I ask them several questions. What could be done? What's the most inexpensive way to accomplish what we need to accomplish? We need new administrative offices for the landfill. We need maintenance facilities. I ask them, is it better to have two separate buildings? Is it better to have all in one building? Is it better to put the administrative offices in and stack them double since we have a high roof?
Let me interrupt. So who was this you're talking to? The people that are doing
The
this planning?
people who prepared our,
Who want to do
prepared
this
our
work?
bid.
Okay.
Well, correct. But they were doing cost estimating, what could give us the best and lowest cost that we're after. This is as plain Jane a building as you can get. There are no frills from a creature comfort standpoint. There are a few frills that are required, electronics-wise, for security purposes, networking ability within the building, things that have to happen. There's no carpet, plain drywall walls. There's no floor tile. It's bare concrete that's been sealed, will be sealed. It has what we need. It has restroom facilities in it that have changing areas for the crews, which is something we don't have now. We've got people changing clothes in the break room.
With a female in the building.
With a female in the building. It's completely unacceptable. Trying to think what else is in the building. It gives us the storage space we need for the documents that we don't have now. Trying to think what else. Well, go ahead, I'll turn it over to you.
Too many questions? Because I was going to open it up to anyone who was here who actually paid the bill for this facility.
Well, David, you got
Yeah,
comment on that.
I mean, everybody that comes in that place asks us what we're doing. You know, and the plan is always to build a new building. And overwhelmingly, it is, thank God you guys need something.
And I agree.
You know, we're happy for you. Without saying names, a businessman within a 2-mile radius of there is thrilled to death. Uses the place quite often. He's happy about the building.
He's thrilled that you're building a nice new building.
Actually, Randy heard his comment. Randy was in Friday when he was in there.
Okay.
That he was thrilled to death that we're probably going to get something that we can use.
And I agree. I mean, I don't like the idea of the maintenance people being out in the dead of winter to work on their facilities. I don't like that. I think that we do need a building that they can work in and get out of the way. I do agree with that. All right. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this?
My leg wakes up, I'll walk up.
Yeah,
Terry Wells from Camden. You mentioned something about the building codes for county buildings. Did I misunderstand you? Is there a certain code that the building has to be?
There are codes for public facilities.
Okay.
And
Does
it
it
would
mean
be
they have to be
considered-
made out of certain type of materials?
No, it's ADA requirements for the restrooms, it's ADA requirements for the entire facility as far as...
Not that it has to be built out of concrete or drywall
No.
or anything like that? So it's not restricted?
I'm not aware of a particular code on the materials.
Okay. Because one of the commissioners brought to my attention a year or so ago, and so I just went out on my own and kind of got estimates of buildings that would possibly be used, and it was considerably less than the estimates you have here. It's not new construction, but it's pre-modular kind of construction that they can roll in, set up, and if you needed to move it, you can move it fairly easy. You put the wheels back under it and move it.
Here's the problem with modular construction.
Okay?
At best, it has a 15-year life expectancy.
Okay.
If we're going to finance this for 20 years, I've got an asset that won't survive the financing period.
Okay.
That's a problem.
Okay.
Plus, I'm then spending that money again in 15 years. Long term, I haven't saved anything. And I've got a short-term gain, but I've got a long-term expense.
I don't know where you're getting the 15 years. I see people living in modular homes out here for 30 and 40 years, and they're still in pretty good shape. So, I mean, if you take care of something, it'll last, even the modular construction. I don't know where you're getting this 15 years.
I got that straight from, I was talking to the mod space vendor.
Okay.
Name of the company. And that's their literature. Its design life is 15 years.
Okay.
It will last longer
I
if
don't have
properly
my literature
taken
in
care
front
of.
of me, so I can't.
Now,
speak
if you're
to
talking, if you happen to be talking, Unibuild, I think, is the one that builds the homes.
Mhm.
I think those do have a longer lifespan. I did not check into pricing for Unibuild type structure.
Okay.
However, I'll go ahead. I'll let you go.
Well, they're very, very strong, and I don't know, did I hear you right that you're going to build a building that is contiguous, the warehouse or the, whatever you call your building where you're going to house the equipment, is going to be all one building or at least connected?
Yes. The design as we have it right now is one 186 by 60 steel structure.
Okay. Did we look at insurance costs for that? Because insurance is going to be more if you have your warehouse building connected to where your office would be.
Truthfully, no, I did not look at the insurance.
Yeah,
cost.
fire insurance will cost you more if it's connected. So you may want to.
But there are requirements to have firewalls, which is included. But I looked at initial cost. That's what the commissioners were asking me for. I looked at initial cost. I did not try and factor in every possible long-term cost. I did look at long-term cost from the standpoint of, is what I'm building serviceable? Can it be maintained over time? Will it last? And will it meet our requirements?
And the life of landfill is about 50 years, I understand.
50 years at its current rate of fill. If we expand it, it could last to 500 years, so long past the building.
What is the dimensions on the warehouse? I call it warehouse. What do you call it? Your building, maintenance building, or whatever?
The maintenance facility is roughly 60 by 70 or 65.
It is 58,
Nominal.
round number 59 by 75.
Okay, you can get an 80 by 125 building, steel building,
Your numbers are
guaranteed. Excuse me.
Your number is no good because it is not bid and built per county. We have to deal with prevailing wage. If you go out and get a price, it doesn't include prevailing wage.
This is a prefabricated building.
Correct.
You just
It's
stand
still
it up.
perfect.
You don't have to build it. It's already built.
You still have to erect it with prevailing wage.
Okay. Isn't that cheaper than raw construction starting from
This
ground up?
is a pre-engineered metal building.
What percentage does prevailing wage add to a project?
I mean, it's a difference of, it depends what your guys,
Well,
I mean, it depends what they pay. I mean, I
But
guess that's,
it's
Well,
roughly
it is
50%, it's roughly 50% more on the labor. That is the one thing you cannot compare. Private citizen can go out and get a price on something.
Okay.
The government can never purchase it for that price. It is always more expensive because of the prevailing wage issues.
Well, I'm kind of representative of the citizenry here. When I hear a $1.3 million
I
facility
understand
going
that.
up at a landfill, kind of raises the hair on the back of your neck and saying, wait a minute, I know I can do better than that. So this will help me explain to my neighbors when they hear
Yeah.
this number
Yeah.
being thrown out.
Government, I don't care what government.
Well, I was afraid that would figure it.
Cannot purchase. You give me a spec.
Yep.
If we go out and bid the same spec, exactly, mine's going to be substantially more than yours.
So we're not allowed to build anything out there on our own idea, our own, going out and getting the building. It has to be by government spec.
No. If we use the same specification,
Yeah.
you hand me your specification,
Yeah.
we both go out and get quotes for it.
Yeah.
Mine's going to be substantially higher than yours because of the prevailing wage and the requirements that we have to comply with by law. It's not that we want to. We're required by law to comply with those.
Seems like there should be some kind of end run on this thing. But
Where would prevailing wage fit in on a prefab building?
any man I are on site is considered prevailing wage.
So basically, it's a setup.
Yeah, I mean, whatever they're there for, once they roll through the gate, they're making the prevailing wage.
Well, one of the estimates I had for this prefab double-wide building, which is probably close to 3,000 square feet, and needed a little bit more than that, it was set up on site for less than $200,000, ready to move in. All you do is connect electricity to it.
Without prevailing wage.
Well,
Now,
I mean, that was
now-
their quote. They'll set it up for you.
yes, but was it a government project? Was it prevailing wage? They have to pay prevailing wage when
Yeah.
they come on site.
I didn't ask them that.
And did that include your foundation work?
Yes, it did.
Utilities
Yes, it did.
to the site?
Yeah, it did. Less than $200,000, 3,000 square feet. Dave's got the literature. I can't recall the exact numbers offhand, but and it's been about a year and a half or so since I got that information. But, so if we had that same building and just added prevailing wage for hookup, it still sounds like we could save a substantial amount of money. And it was a nice building.
Does that include interior walls?
Oh yeah.
Include interior
You
walls?
designed it
electric-
exactly the way you wanted it, how many offices, what the space of each office was. They designed it exactly the way you wanted it. And it wasn't Unibuild, it was an outfit out of Indiana. Do you recall that, Dave? Or can you-
Double name utility, I can't
Yeah.
think of what it was.
Anyhow, and you already talked about having to make the landfill pay for itself before you can start this project, right? We're going to go in debt on top of that?
I'm working within the existing budget. The new debt would be within the existing budget.
And the building that I had gotten quotes for Dave it had showers in it also. It had two separate entrances on either end. Came into an area like a mudroom type situation. Restrooms off to the side with showers in them. It was a very nice building. He said, and I can redesign this any way you want. I said, for how much more? He said, same price. You design it the way you want.
Showers would be nice to have. They're not
It would.
included in this, but
It would be worth looking into, I think, and then add the prevailing wage on top of it. I still think we'll save
Even at that,
cheap
though,
change.
that we would have to put that out to bid, so there's no guarantee what that number would be. That was kind of with the schedule we're under. We put this thing out to bid, it don't get done until probably 16.
Well, except for the fact that we've known about this for a while, and so we're under this because we're still discussing the big giant building that's desired out in the land.
It's not going to sit well with taxpayers.
And I'm not going to debate how it'll sit. We're under a crunch, and it's not been from one person. And this building's been talked about for, as far as I can tell, back to '99. Everybody knew this was coming, and now we're at a point that something has to be done. And
the reason we are at this building where we are right now is the commission wanted a hard number before they would permit design to begin.
What's the company name on that? Who's building that?
This is through, well, the state term contract is through the Gordian Group. There's the Gordian IZ.
Are these the builders? Gordian?
No.
Like the
Oh.
general contractors?
Oh.
Yeah, Gordian EZIQC. They have the state term contract for construction of buildings.
So they're like the middle guys, the middleman.
Well, they hire yes, in effect.
Okay.
They have then general contractors for each of the 4 quadrants of the state of Ohio that will actually do the work. They have, in our case, it would be the Lusk Group, Lusk Company, Lusk, who are actually out of Kentucky. That would be the general. They've told us their intention is to do the majority, if not all of the work with their own crews.
They're the same company that's currently rebuilding the
Scale.
I-70 scales on, right there at the state line for the state.
Yeah. This contract is set up as a state term contract. It's set up for everything from you want to repaint your office, maybe put some new furniture in, you call them up, they give you a quote. It's state term contract, so there's no bidding requirements. It's already been bid. This allows you to then just write the PO, get it done once you agree upon the work scope and the price. And that's how we got to this point, where we're at with this building. Commission wanted to know the firm price. The only way I could get to a firm price is to design it. Well, we now have a 30% design drawing. It needs to be completed by a architect, A&E firm, which there's $30,000 in that price tag for the permit drawings to be created by the architect. That is included in those fees. That's included in the 1.2 number.
Okay.
That's not the additional $25,000 that is tacked on, identified as engineering.
Well, it sounds like even if the office space was reduced, it's not going to make a considerable difference because of all the added money they put in this thing.
Padded is kind of a loaded term, but
With all the government limitations and oversight that has to go into the building. How's that?
correct. Yeah, okay.
You'd be politically correct. Yeah, 3,600 square feet, and you had, how many employees did you say, 10?
10 individuals will be working out of that.
Most of those people kind of out in the field doing the work? They're not in an
Yes,
office.
they're not in the office all
There's got to be
all
somebody
day, but-
piling up the trash,
Well, that's
right?
correct. There would be 4 individuals in the office all the time. You'd be the scale operator, the sanitary engineer, landfill manager, solid waste assistant manager, or assistant director, I think is their title. Those individuals would be in the office most of the time. The other individuals are in and out. There is a office that would be shared by the landfill assistant manager and the mechanic. They both need a place to be able to sit down and do work. But you have to have assembly areas. You've got to have a lunchroom. You've got to have changing facilities for them. And the changing facilities have to be designed into both the men's and the women's restroom. At the current time, we don't have any women working outside. But that could change the next time we have a vacancy.
Well, I'm going to continue to do my own private investigation here, see if there's
But,
some other ways we can
but
cut
that's
costs.
that's why I gave the cost comparisons between the other facilities.
Yeah.
360 is a little bit on the higher side, but even this office right here, like I said, is 282, and they don't have all the facilities that are comparable to this.
Yeah.
That need to be, if this was standalone, there isn't enough space here.
Some could argue, why would the landfill people need more nicer space than the people working?
Oh,
in
it
the
is
office?
not. It is not nicer. It is not nicer.
As
It's air
viewed
concrete.
from the public.
I would be hard pressed to find anybody who would think what we're building, what we intend to build, would be considered nicer than this.
But then the other side of the coin would be, this is all they built out there, and it's $1.3 million. That's going to be their lasting impression, I think. We paid that for that. That's all I
It
have.
is what it is. And that's all I can say about that.
Yep. Sounds like your hands are tied.
It costs money to be in business, and that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I guess I'll speak up. I've been here before talking about this. Kind of know where I stand. I said before, the taxpayer, I would not be for it, and now I'm standing before you as a future commissioner and a taxpayer and a businessman. I love this building. I think it's beautiful. I think it would meet all the needs of the landfill. I don't think it's needed. These guys, I know I've been out there several times. They work hard, and they've been in the elements. Landfill's almost 50 years old. If you look at what we currently have at the landfill, we're about 1,200 square foot office space that we're going to lose. We're losing a scale, and we're losing a road. So in my opinion, we're losing an office, a scale, and a road. Those are the things that need to be put back right away.
Right.
We have to have those three things to continue doing business. I too did some research, and I did contact Unibuilt, and they install offices all the time. The office that I was looking at, and I did this on my own, so I just come up with the numbers. I thought 2,200 square feet of office space, we would almost double our current offices. We'd be well under $200,000, and that would include sprinkler systems and everything that it takes to become compliant with, and that's installed now. Even if we have prevailing wages, if we have $30,000 built in for architecture, I would rather take that $30,000 and put it into building a facility than drawing one. So, I feel like we need to replace what we have. I've heard we want to run this like a business, and if we're going to run this like a business, we need to live within our means and put back in place what we're taking out and not add things. I think we do need a maintenance facility. I know we need a maintenance facility and storage. Those are two critical things in a business, but we don't have them, and we haven't had them since 1967 or 68. So that doesn't make it right, but that's where I feel we're at. And as far as the numbers, as far as the office space divided by the people, I was going to touch on what Mr. Willis did. We don't have 10 people in the office. We have 4. So those numbers are skewed a little bit. And when you're comparing it to the county engineers, you only did there's probably 40 or 50 people that work up there, but you divide it by 13. Because those people have to share that office too.
That's in the building, and I did explain.
Well,
That part of this, they do have a large assembly room in there that allows them to bring in and meet with all the rest of their crew.
I'm not trying to call you out. You took your building and divided by your total employees. You took the county engineer's office and divided by the office employees, not total employees.
Well, if I wanted to do...
It makes your square footage look a lot better.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but the other issue that I didn't address at the county engineer's office is they have multiple offices and multiple buildings up there.
Well, I was just trying to say that those numbers aren't extremely accurate, because I would take the 3,600 and divide it by the 4 people that's going to be working in there day in and day out, because we got guys on the face, we got guys working in other areas that they're really not occupying a lot of space during the day.
But the space in the building is required to support those individuals. So
I
you
hear you.
have to count them.
And I hear you. Lunch breaks,
Lunch breaks,
which I think
changing
if you look at
areas.
this 2,200 square feet, or let's just say 3,000 square feet, could accommodate a break room and bathrooms, changing stations. 3,000 square feet is pretty good sized building. I just want to make that point that we're not looking at total employee. You can't look at my employees here and, you know, my total employees divided by this square footage and just the office people and not the all employees at this. I just want to make that point. The only thing I would say is, you know, I do think the landfill is going to grow. I think that we have a great asset in having a landfill, and I would like to see it done in phases. You know, we're talking about prevailing wage. If we go and we do one big project, it is prevailing wage. If we do it in increments or phases, you know, I think we do need an office now. I've talked to you about this. You know, I do think we need an office, of course, but we may need a maintenance facility down the road. Maybe we could do that under prevailing wage, you know, keep it below prevailing wage. I mean, and I'm just throwing that out. But I have a problem, and I can tell you that I believe the community will have a problem with this. And we got to get by with what we need, and not what we want. And I want that. I want it. I think that's great. But what do we really need today to replace what we currently have without putting a burden on the taxpayers?
I guess one thing I want to state is, when you're getting into a project like this, you are always money ahead to spend it now rather than delay it. If you half-step it, move yourself through in phases, it costs you more in the long run.
I think you have to look at the cost of the risk, because with not knowing where the landfill's going, and I think, you know, we all kind of know where we want it to go. Do we spend $1.3 million right now because it's a little cheaper per square foot and roll the dice, or do we put in what we need to do? It may cost us a little bit more in the long run, but we don't know where we're going to be in the long run. If our volume continues to decline and we don't bring in more trash, we got a $1.3 million building that we can't pay for.
Yep.
That's my only point. I like building as a businessman. I could probably put up a $500,000 facility right now. I choose not to do that because, I mean, it'd be great. I could use it. I could use the offices. I could use the maintenance facility. I could use the storage. But it's not living within my means, and I would like to see the county live within the same means as I do as a local businessman. And that's all I have.
And one thing about creating an office space, or something else that replaces what you have now, you can still use the existing house as storage. I mean, that could be your storage facility.
Our intention is for that currently we are planning to use that for storage because there is not enough space in this to store everything that needs to be stored. What does have to be stored at the site are the permit drawings, the drawings per se, the drawings and documents for the landfill. That's what's intended to be, that and the sewer district documents are intended to be stored here in a proper manner. The storage that we utilize the existing house for would be longer term storage for the solid waste district handouts that they pass out, the promotional items that they utilize. None of that would be over at this facility.
Mr. Creech.
I didn't say my name either, Ronnie Creech. I don't think I did that. One thing I forgot to mention on my notes, in talking with Connie and I think Denise, and I'm not sure who else went on the visits to the other landfills, but it was my understanding in talking with them that no other landfill had anything elaborate, and I'm not saying this is elaborate, I know it doesn't have chandeliers, but it's $1.3 million, so I'm going to call that elaborate. But none of these buildings were extraordinary. None of them, they had showers and they were storage. Their showers were storage units. They didn't have elaborate. I mean, I really think we need to look at this and look at the simple approach. What do we need to get by? Because the other landfills are obviously doing the same thing. They're living within their means. I mean, it sounded like they were not state-of-the-art facilities at the other however many landfills.
Let me ask you a quick question, Rodney. Is it appropriate and fair to treat county employees differently because of their location they work in?
No. You would have a brand new, and we talked about this, you would have a brand new office.
We would have
bigger than the one you have.
Correct.
But so I don't see you guys being treated unfairly. You'd have the newest building in the county.
We would have the newest building in the county, but currently, if you compare what we have now, we've got second-class citizens at the landfill.
in an unsafe building.
And that building's going to be destroyed, and you're going to get a new one.
Correct.
And I guess my point is, okay, let's just put it
This
this way.
facility is not out of the realm or comparison to anything else. And we're having the same argument that they had when they built the jail. They looked at the dollars and not what was needed. Now they've got a Sally port that they can't get anything into that they need to. They've got HVAC problems up there, that's my understanding, as well as some other problems. Because they looked at the dollar and not what was needed.
And I'm not.
That's where I am trying to prevent that from happening again.
And I hear you, but I guess I'm not one to cut corners. If we got to spend $250,000 on this, we're still. If we need to spend an extra $50,000 to $80,000, let's pull this number out for a little bit bigger bathrooms, or I'm okay with that. I don't want to cut a corner, but I never would cut a corner. But I think what I'm saying is, I'm against building something 3 times bigger than we already have. It doesn't come down to the type of employee that you have, or we're not treating people fairly. That place is it's not good. I mean, if you wouldn't expand the landfill, it would still need to be torn down, in my opinion. But this is our opportunity to upgrade. I think we can upgrade for a third of the cost and still have a great facility. It's brand new. It's going to be. Look at a 3,600 square foot Unibuilt facility, and it's probably still half price. I would assume. I know it is. Now we still got to touch on the maintenance of that. I mean, I know that I'm looking at phases because we know what we have to run the business. To me, that's all we need to put back is to keep it. Keep running from day to day.
We cannot avoid building a maintenance facility now because the old one will be torn down. There will be no place to store tools. There will be no place to do anything that has to be done out of the weather.
Well, I have I showed you the other option, and I know it's not a great one.
It's not a great one, and again, we're taking a half step, spending money instead of spending the money that needs to be spent. We're spending more money over time.
Well, and it gets back to these Unibuilt homes. I mean, I did run some questions by them, and they said they have Unibuilt structures that they built in the '60s that they could take us to today, and they're very nice.
I will admit, I did not look at Unibuilt. Unibuilt does have a better reputation than the other places.
But I think those are the options we need to be looking at. I really believe that because I'm glad I'm not making this decision. I'm glad you guys are making this decision because I wouldn't want to live with it. And if I was up there, I know what decision I would try it. I know how I feel about it, and I think how I feel about it. So I'm going to stop talking, but I do have some concerns, and I think that the community will have more than I have.
I guess, to me, we're looking at perception and not at facts, because it is far cheaper for the county, for the taxpayers, for us to expand the landfill west. Far cheaper than moving into our next section, which will be 2C. That'll be the most expensive, as this current footprint is, that is going to be the most expensive portion of construction in that landfill. It's going to be really, really expensive. It is far cheaper to expand west. But that was shot down. So it's a perception thing. It's not a dollar thing, because the dollar thing, if it's about the dollar, that west expansion is by far the way to go. And I kind of feel that the same thing about the building. We're not looking to what we need. We're looking at the perception of what is going to be there. It is embarrassing to me as a landfill manager when the EPA comes on site and I have to scramble and dig and try to find the stuff that that we're required to have in hand, because we don't have the facility to do it. And as far as how we go about doing it, something has to be done, and it has to be done in June of 15. I'm going to start building that confluence. When that scale's blocked off, it's going to be $30,000 a month to rent a scale there so we can keep that place open. I don't want to go that route, but we've had a temporary permit from the EPA for some drainage that we have set up. And that was temporary, was given us in the 2009. And I think all of us will agree that 5 years is not temporary.
Right.
We have hid and we have done our best to keep the EPA away from that area. Because as soon as they find it, it's not going to be good for us. It's not going to look good on me. And that's not what, I guess that's the bad part is the employees and the people that run that place look bad because the hand were dealt. And that's, you know, it's not a dump, it's a sanitary landfill. It's a highly engineered, you know, constructive. It's, you know, it's just the things have changed so much in the EPA in the last 20 years. And what Randy and I are constantly battling is what are the restrictions going to be in 20 more years? You know, the last thing we want to do is build a facility, then in 10 years, we're saying, well, this isn't going to work. You know, we have
with the unknowns, we could do this structure and it's still not work.
How do you, yeah, how exactly?
And we don't have, you know, what we don't have in here is we have an operator of record currently that we know in less than 2 years is going to be retired. We know as a county,
I guess I don't want to build a building for future unknowns that we don't know. And I'm not, I think this is awesome.
You guys you don't know? I can think of at least 3 people we probably need to add to this facility, and there's no space for them.
Yeah.
There's not built-in. There's no built-in for expansion.
And
This is a basic building. There is nothing here for expansion. And you want to talk about perception?
I'm not worried about. I'm worried about.
There are 2
I'm worried about
perceptions.
taxpayers.
Well, there's the taxpayer perception that we're wasting money, but there's also the perception of are we operating this place in a professional manner, both to our own citizens, anybody from out of county that would want to come. If they're going to bring their waste here, they bring a certain amount of liability that they have to, that they assume a certain amount of liability that we took care of it correctly. If we have a professional, semi-professionally looking facility, that helps with that perception. It also helps with the EPA's perception. The county is putting enough money into this facility to operate it correctly.
Well, if I was, when I say perception, I've not brought up the word perception. I don't believe,
Well,
is my
it
perception.
is a perception and an opinion of the taxpayer. You're wasting money.
Yeah.
That's a perception.
Yeah, I agree.
But I know professionals who sit in cubes, who sit in cubes smaller than what our, Sarah and Kim sit in. I know people who make really good money who sit in a 6x6 cubicle. That there's not necessarily a need for office space with the door, maybe for conferences, whatever. But there's no need.
There is. I agree. There are a lot of people that sit in cubes, but there's also several conference rooms available to them to go to that have a door.
Right.
We don't have the luxury of building 3 or 4 different conference rooms. We're building offices. We have 1 conference room in here.
Right, but you could, instead of building official offices, you could do cube walls and cube space. Those are very dynamic.
They're very dynamic and they are very expensive. You can build a wall cheaper than you can buy that modular furniture. That's just a fact. You can build a wall better, cheaper than the modulars.
This has got to be one of the more politically tone-deaf presentations I have ever seen. These guys have asked you multiple times to come in here with tops $1 million spent. You keep coming back with 1.3 to 1.7 million, and you always lay down, we're on the crunch time. Like crunch time gets closer and closer and closer instead of doing what you were told.
I came in with an $800,000 building.
You came in with an $800,000
The rest of the expenses are things that I can't control that have to be done.
Yeah, but I believe you're just not, you're not following where these people are coming from, where I'm coming from. He came in, he tells you, and you say, well, I never checked Unibill.
I did not check Unibill. That is one failing I will say. I did not check Unibill.
Well, okay, let's go the other way here. We've been told that you can operate the landfill taking twice as much tonnage with the same amount of employees, and you just mentioned it. You can find an excuse for 3 more employees, and whether
they are not related to the operation of the landfill itself. They are one of those operators of record. This facility is not just the landfills. The sanitary engineer is responsible for wastewater treatment at 2 plants right now, potentially a 3rd one.
And again, in the spring, or when was the last time we were in here for this presentation, we're going to open up the county landfill to accept outside tonnage. The question was put to you, will this attract the outside tonnage? You got a couple truckloads. So you're going to you're going to build this building, or a building, and you're still going to come back and hit taxpayers and the businesses up for probably dumping fees and higher assessments next spring or sometime next year in all likelihood. Right?
My hope is no.
That's what
If
I
I
was
have-
hoping for, because I was hoping for a lower cost. And all likelihood,
I would
you're
like
going to-
this building to be $200,000 and we're done.
Yeah, I'm
It
sure
can't be. To get what the landfill needs to operate
Well, he's
correctly
telling you have
over time.
1,000 square feet or something now, or half of what you're going to build. We're not. You're very argumentative on what you need, and fine, you're sticking to your guns, but you're losing money.
I have been studying
What
this
is the
for
ti-
2.5 years. I think I know what I need.
Well, okay. Well, what is your annual tonnage expected to be for this year?
We're on line like 28.5 maybe.
Okay. Here's the point. You're saying this stuff, we're going to run this out for 50 years, we want to build a building that's going to last for a while. The reason we're in this predicament is because 10 years ago, we did another study based on 42,000 tons of trash. We're now down to 28.5. Okay, so for us to say, okay, let's go out and plan for another 500 years or whatever, that's absolutely ridiculous. You don't know what 10 years is going to be. If you can get by with less, this thing of second-class employees, I'm just not buying. Are you having problems filling the jobs down there?
To some extent.
When was the last time you had trouble filling the job? Are all the positions you currently have filled?
At the current time, yes.
Okay. I honestly, you're not presenting this very well. In fact, if anything, you're probably going to inflame the people once they watch this. And I know that's not your intent. Thank you.
I guess the only thing I can say is I was asked to put together a building and a price. I've come back with the cheapest that I can do. I think the number, or what I'm hearing, is that it's the administrative offices that are the problem. But I truthfully don't know how they can be reduced and save any money. That makes any sense.
In what you're currently looking at. In your drawing, and you're looking at what you presented, you can't see that we can reduce in that.
I'm having problems figuring out how Unibuilt can get that cheaper, because the steel, the envelope of the building is a steel building, and that is about the cheapest that you can get. So I'm really having trouble figuring out how Unibuilt's getting cheaper. That's where
Unibuilt doesn't. We're not figuring in a 4,500 square foot shop and a lean-to.
Well, I understand. You're
That's where
talking.
it's
You're
cheap.
talking the administrative area, and part of yes, there is probably one thing on that that's raising that price on a square foot basis, and that is the high roof. But it was cheaper to run the continuous roof than it was to put a step in it.
Oh, Mr. Boone?
Well, yes, my name is Dennis Biddle. I don't know anything about buildings, so I'm trying to. What I had a question about, it seems we're in a rush to approve this. At the beginning of the year, a third of the commission is going to change. It's my understanding that probably Rodney is going to be on the commission then. However, when it's voted, I'd like to have three people sit around to blame instead of just two.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. Okay. Is there anything else? Anything, Chris? David, anything else?
Just a couple of things. The scales. It went from 88 to around 80 on your page today.
That's because I applied the discounts that they gave us, rather than $128,000 roughly discount over everything. I tried to apply it to all items. That's why it says after discounts are applied. That's why these numbers are a little bit different. Rather than show the total cost that they gave us for each item and then a discount at the end.
And the value of the landfill administration area, $408,000.
And that's an estimation on my part, trying to break out the numbers as they were presented to me, because they did not break that out individually or completely. I had to take some assumptions of percentages of the total building cost, of the steel building cost. There were some things obviously that would be all office. Some things weren't. The HVAC system was the easy one. That was all in the administrative offices, so 100% of that was applied to it. The electrical, I had to make some assumptions on the electrical. And as far as the utilities, I had to make some assumptions. So that $400 and some thousand is my best guess of a breakout. Its validity is probably within 10 or 15%.
And when we did take that landfill tour last year, I guarantee you, when all those buildings were built, they all looked brand new that very first year.
And they all looked really nice that very first year.
And given time, they don't look so well. I think you probably told Rodney this, but you're right. We looked at every shower that they had was filled with other stuff. They didn't use the showers. I know it's nice to have. And in case of an emergency, it's nice to have it. Even the locker rooms. Didn't they all say they didn't really use locker rooms? So,
did they not use the locker rooms, or did they not use the lockers?
Well, no. Yeah, I think both.
Were their men or crews required to change clothes on site?
That's what I know.
I don't remember.
Our crews are required to change clothes on site. That is a health and safety issue for not only our employees but their families.
Can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
Since I have so much to
Something
say.
like,
I apologize. I put a lot of thought into that. The other thing I think that I want to put on record is, it's one thing to put up this building. It's another thing to maintain it, clean it, utilities. We're looking at construction costs. Again, long term for the life of the landfill, we know what it's going to cost to heat and clean a 2,200 square foot office because we've been doing it for years.
No, we haven't.
haven't been cleaning it?
We haven't been maintaining it.
You understand my point, I hope. The cost to maintain a facility of this size versus what we have. I'm just additional
Can I add
cost.
something real quick?
Sure.
The reason they haven't maintained that building because we've been replacing it for over 10 years. So why spend the money?
I'm not
Why
saying
it's not
that.
been maintained.
I'm not talking about what's been
I don't
done
want
in
to
the
make
past.
the inference that we wouldn't maintain a new building.
I'm not saying that in any way. I think what I'm saying is from the size difference. I'm not saying that what the cost to maintain and heat and a 2,200 square foot building that we're used to doing and going to a structure of this size, there's a lot of, I'm not going to say hidden costs because we don't know what those costs are going to be, but those are the costs that, in 30 years, we may need to put a roof on it, or we may need to, I don't know, I'm just throwing things out.
From a hidden cost standpoint, I would be surprised if it costs us more to heat this than it does the existing facility, because there is really no insulation in the existing facility.
The price difference of the new unit built versus this structure, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm not, I guess, because if you got 3,600 square foot office, that's not going to take a while to clean it. I don't know if you have the people to do that or not, but I just want to throw that out.
I just quickly added up the things that we have to do, the scale, the driveway, the utilities to the building, engineering, all that. And it adds up to, $386,000. I think that I have, and I believe that the public, the taxpaying public will have part that we will have a hard time swallowing is the $800,000 cost for the building. I think we could do a lot better than $800,000 with those two buildings. So I've had this stance all along. I think that we need to look at what we need versus what we want to continue the functions down to landfill. I just think that this it's too much.
Okay. This is what the board telling me that what we thought was an agreement to go forward and talk to the bond council 2 weeks ago is null and void at this point, because I'm not going to waste the bond council's time to go forward any further. I need to know that.
I guess your comment makes me a little confused on your dollar amounts. I just want to make sure we're talking about this.
This is just
It's actually $400,000. Because if you look, it's $800,000 for the building.
5%. I did 5% on the cost of the contingency cost is on the things that need to happen minus the $800,000 building. So my 5% is on the $367,60. That's how mine. But $400,000, we can round up to $400,000.
Because if you look at it, everything that has to be done is, if you exclude the building's $800,000. The price is 1.28. So you're looking at $482,000 there, plus contingency, plus a little bit of the engineering. $1,282 minus 800 is
I thought the building was 988.
988 was before the deduction, sorry, thank you, that was applied to the total price. That's why the numbers are slightly different that they're seeing than what you
Okay. I did get 600 on that one. So what's 482,000 is what you said?
Yes.
I still have an issue with the $800,000 building. That's what it comes down to.
Yep.
I still think we should do better than that.
I guess I'm trying to understand the thought process here. So what you're saying is at this point in time, you're okay with putting the scales in, everything that it takes to get to the scales. But what's the proposal for office staff and field staff of equipment?
I like the modular, some sort of modular setup for the office staff and the scout house, which was one of the options that we had in one of the original.
We talked about several options, and I thought I'd get back to one building to try to cut costs. And then I don't know. And I appreciate you guys looking at all these options, Terry and Rod, and don't get me wrong, I'm not throwing all these all out, but we got to make sure we're comparing apples and apples when we do this. And it does become very complex when you're trying to put all this stuff together and make it affordable, because there are some hoops that we have to jump through in the world of government, unfortunately. But I will say, in my experience, having been through this, if we start doing this a piece at a time, it's going to, in the long haul, will become more expensive. The other part of that is, if we go to Unibuilt, there's a company, Safeco, there's several of them out here that do modular office facilities, and I can tell you, depending on what you want to pay for them, is how long they're going to last. So the ones he was referring to are short term. And they'll tell you up front, these are built for about 15 years. Now, you may get more out of them if you really take care of them, but they're just built this way. If you're going to build more of a home, you're getting more of a structured facility. But those are things we have to really sit and look at. I guess as a body sitting here, we have to figure out what we need or would like in longevity.
I would ask that we get some kind of direction, because we're all concerned about taxpayer dollars, but I got equipment on rent and building the road, and I need to know a direction where we're going here to keep our costs as low as we can keep them.
Well, we're building the road. I mean, that's.
Well, I got a building
that has
pad
to
sitting there
happen.
too.
Yeah, we're building the road.
And if
And
we
we're
build
gonna
two
stay on
buildings, if we build two buildings, the building pad changes. The orientation of everything changes. The asphalt prices change.
I was a little concerned about seeing the construction down there before we actually made a decision of the direction we were going to go. The building pad will change
But
because.
we have no choice. We have to keep moving. Or we are going to run out of space for traction.
I like the idea of doing it in phases as we can afford it. I think it's risky for the taxpayers for us to go into debt with the landfill.
We will never be able to afford anything we need without doing debt.
Why? Oh, I
So the question is, do we just swallow the whole thing and get it done? Or do we string out the paint? Because from my standpoint, if I have to come down and spend 6 months selling what we want to do in the next phase, you're wasting a lot of my time and your time. Now, I understand the concept that you want to space this out and not incur all the debt at once, but you're not saving the taxpayers any money.
can you guarantee that there will be no raising of the assessments? You
No.
can't.
I can't guarantee that.
No, you can't. And that's a mystery. What's going to happen with our taxpayers' assessments is a mystery. $1.3 million in debt is a given. It's a done deal. And these two things need to work together.
I understand that.
So, I just don't think that we can list that on our taxpayers and our business owners. Randy needs direction. Are we going to cancel the bond council? Are we sending him back out for more of the idea that's what I want to see, or what some of these people have expressed they want to see?
Either way, we're going to have to go to bond council.
I think so too, actually.
I don't know what we'll do.
Yeah. I just need to know how much.
We don't have an op, we don't have the money, no matter what direction we go.
Will they prepare us that? I've not dealt with the bond council. Will they prepare us estimates of financing costs for different values?
Different scenarios?
Yeah.
I think we still have to have a conversation with them. I'm just trying to figure out what direction we go from here. If we're not going with this plan, we have to give these guys direction. We've been kicking this can down the road for too many years.
Hey, I'll be honest, the reason I've got this drawing right here is because the commission would not allow me to hire an architect, an A&E firm, to design a building for conventional bid build, where we could have fleshed out a whole lot of things. I had to have a hard number and a hard design before I could get authorization to get the design done. That's why we got to this point. This is the only way I could get this. And if we're backing off from this now,
I guess I'm in an ethical problem because these people spent a lot of money in preparation on something that it sounds like we're going to can.
Well, I've never been in agreement with this. I've always thought that we should be able to do this ourselves and figure out the modular. I've always been in favor of a modular building and doing it in phases.
I hear that, but the modular we were talking about was not stuff that would last. Again, I haven't looked at Unibuilt. Unibuilt is a wood structure, not typically considered a commercial. Normally a home, but yes, I know they can build some office stuff. But if that's the direction, I'll go look at it. I'll find out what the price is. But I have a very sneaking suspicion that till we get everything included, and we are talking apples and not apples and oranges, we're going to be back here. I'll be surprised if we're not. But I've been wrong before.
I remember that you took this direction because you were trying to use a state contract and try to get us something that was through state purchasing that would not include a prevailing wage. We went in that direction so that we could see.
No, not getting prevailing wage was never a consideration. We can't build anything and not be in prevailing wage.
Well, and
the dollar values are too high.
Well, then maybe it was just a state purchasing contract. I've always said, I even wrote a letter of the way I thought I wanted to see it. So, I'm one person on this board. We need to give him direction.
Well, Randy, I think you did what this commission asked a while back. They also asked you to put the administration building and the maintenance building together, and I wasn't necessarily for that. I've always been for the maintenance building since we've never had one. I've more or less taken the stance for quite a while, and especially with this House Bill 592. 492 or 592?
592.
Not knowing exactly what's going to happen here in the future for Preble County, that the assessments, and I told Denise this and Chris knows this, the assessments were placed on the residents because that's what the residents want. Preble County's trash for Preble County landfill. And yes, because of a good solid waste department, Jeff, the recycling has done better, and we don't have as much trash. The companies are much better in packaging stuff too, so there's not as much waste. But before, and this is a very nice building. I like the maintenance part of it especially. But before I see an administration building like this, not knowing what 2 or 3 years may show for us, you came in several months ago and gave a nice presentation and told us that maybe in 2 years, if things would change around, you may be able to reduce the assessments, bringing in other outside trash. And I think not knowing exactly what the future may hold there, I'm not saying that a good administration building might not be for the future, but let's try to make some money here first. And I know you've had your discussions with some other outside companies, outside counties, to potentially bring in more trash someday. And I guess it's already starting to happen. Right now we've got a BOMAG. We need to replace that here pretty soon. We've got a lot of big costs. And I would, as we took our tour last year, we saw a lot of the scale houses were sort of like the small little modular building. We saw one that was, 16 foot wide. And she says, hey, don't make it that wide, make it 8 foot, because in case you get double scale someday, you don't want to be having to move 16 foot one way and back the other. We saw some not okay facilities and some that weren't so nice. But I did take a lot back from that. And I recall all of them said, don't give a restroom for haulers. They said they're welcome to use the restroom down the road somewhere or stop to eat somewhere and use the restroom there. I do remember that's one thing that they strongly said not to. And I know you've got it broken out from a men and women's restroom. And
Well, no, we do not for the public per se.
right,
A hall.
that's one.
We have one restroom.
Yeah. Well, I guess my point here, Randy, is
And since we are dealing with a lot of our own citizens, we didn't exclude that. We left that in there as a service to them. But we get a lot of our
I understand.
residential customers come in,
Okay.
towing kids, got their legs crossed and their eyes crossed. And, it's gotta go.
I see one of the bigger problems here is the storage. And I remember seeing the storage facilities in these other landfills. One of them was on the second, you had almost, well, I guess it was steps up there, but it was on the second floor in a maintenance building practically. There was a room all by itself, and that's where the stuff was stored. I do know that you've got a problem with getting everything stored somewhere. In the house is the basement. You use some of that down there, don't you?
Some of the space in the basement is utilized. Yeah, we've got some old files from way back when down there. We've got some of the materials for the solid waste district are down there. Is it all used? No, it is not all used.
And I know it's not ideal to use the house, but my stance, and I've said this several times, is to still utilize the house for now and get something out there next to the scale, some kind of a modular unit. And down the road, 3 or 4 years, hopefully you'll have everything going in a positive direction with additional trash, more revenue, and then if you even need more people, or depending on what House Bill 592 does, you would have a better idea on what to do. But I do agree that we will still need bond counsel regardless if that's the way to go.
Clarification, are you saying put all the office staff up in the house?
Well, you'd be taking, the scale person, of course, wouldn't be there. And no, I'm not saying that, Randy. I'm saying, I know it's not ideal. I totally agree with you on doing everything now that we can versus down the road, not piecemeal it. But this is one case I think it has to be done a little bit. And I'm only talking about the administration building. I don't know if there's a way to add that on someday, if the future commissioners decide to do that. But no, I'm not saying put everything in the house. I'm saying the scale house, and we saw several scale houses that can house quite a bit of stuff. In fact, I'm not sure that one of them that wasn't more than 10, 12 foot wide and about as long as this room did have some of their plans in there. You recall that in one of the counties?
Right. The one that looked like a boxcar had a lot of plans. The general manager's office was in the back. And he had a lot of those.
Once again, I know that's not ideal because you'd like everybody in one spot. I understand that. But until you get this turned around, that we're bringing in more trash.
Well, I guess a quick response to that. I'm left with building the most expensive portions of the administrative offices with a maintenance facility in them. Those being the restrooms and changing areas. That's the most expensive square footage in the building. Because if I've got, and truthfully, the only person I can move up to the house would be David, because there isn't any other space up there right now.
I would say in the maintenance building, you could put any of the people working out in the landfill, because we saw that. We saw even open desks, nothing else around it, in the maintenance buildings. For right now, I think you could build a cubicle or something for some of those guys.
But I still have to provide restroom facilities and a break room for them. I don't know.
Well, I think we saw some tables in some of the maintenance buildings. That's what it was at the table there.
That's a possibility. I still have to build the restrooms. That's the most expensive square footage. That has to be with that. If we split it, that still has to be in there. We can't forget that.
The restrooms at the maintenance building?
Yes. If we move people up to the house, there still has to be restrooms in the maintenance facility. And I'm still bringing all the on-site utilities to the maintenance facilities.
So do we agree that we're probably still gonna have to talk to bond council no matter what? If this project, even at 800,000, 600,000 to $1 million, we're still gonna want to talk to bond council.
Chris, what this, what do you want?
Oh, I'm just trying to figure out how you put it all together and make it work and make it minimize the cost, because unfortunately when you start spreading it back out again, you're going to up the cost again. I guess I hear what you guys are saying, and I'm listening. We want the scales, we want the scale house. What do we do when we put David up in the old house, but what do we do in the interim for the landfill staff and shop? I don't have an answer for that.
Like I said, in the maintenance building and in these other counties, it appeared that they had tables and places where they could eat, refrigerator up there, and there's probably a restroom there too.
So that it's going to be a separate facility. Going back to a separate facility.
No, I'm not saying that. Once again, Chris, it'd be great to build everything all at once, but I don't think we can do that. If this was 4 years from now, you'd have a lot better idea. Because we know what kind of trash we're bringing in. We would know who we have contracts with. We would know when we can reduce these assessments. We would know the personnel that's needed to take care of this additional waste. So that's all I'm saying is delay this, and somehow, yes, you've got to make it somehow so you can add on to this building or make it a separate facility. That's all I'm saying is delay it a few years until we know what's going on.
All right. I'll go back to the numbers together.
So I guess in moving forward to give these guys direction, you're still going to have to talk to bond council. Scales are still going to have to go in, still going to have to put in all the utilities. Because we're going to have to move the utilities anyway. Am I correct, Randy?
Oh yeah, you still got to bring utilities in. You got to have power. You got to have water and gas and.
Still going to have heat. Even if you just put a phone booth up for the scale work, you're still going to have some heat in there, so you're going to have utilities and everything.
Depending on how you're worrying it, you can have to put a restroom in the scale house.
Possibly.
You're starting to duplicate the high dollar issues.
That's where you don't have any savings, unfortunately, because you get down the road, once you start duplicating efforts, not only now, but in the future.
All right, I'll go back and I'll give you the numbers you want for a new built building. I'll give you the numbers for and I'll be very surprised if there's any option that will work that's much cheaper than this. Because the reality of it is, I think we're probably going to be arguing about $200,000.
And maybe if the administration building could be reduced a little bit, I mean, you do have a break room and a conference room, and actually, how many days of the year does EPA come in when you're running into labs and plans for a conference room?
With the recent, when we talked about a couple weeks ago with them taking over for the health department, it's going to be a lot more frequent.
The conference room it would be not just utilized for EPA. Anytime there's any group, anybody comes in to talk to someone, typically you want to take them to a conference room instead of your office. Your desk is one-way mess. The break room and the conference room are sized so that together we can have a gathering of all staff at one time. It's not intended to be utilized. The break room is intended for smaller groups to get in there and use, not the whole 10 people, the whole staff. But the drawings and records room that you see is for permanent storage of documents.
Well, I think that's neat.
The plans need to be put either in a flat file or some other form of hanging file. But those are huge containers. Any way you look at them, they take up a lot of floor space. But that's the right way to store the drawings. It is the right way to be able to present them to the EPA when they come in and want to see stuff, because you can get to it in a reasonable manner. Rolled up drawings, strewn about, just don't work. And right now we've got them strewn about in at least 2 different locations in the building, in tubs. But I will go back and I will call Unibuilt and I'll find out what we can do and get apples to oranges comparisons, or apples to apples comparisons, sorry. So that we can discuss this further. But my opinion is we're delaying inevitable, but that's what we'll do. If there's any other further discussion, I guess we're finished.
What is the bare minimum time frame for scales? What's the lead time on getting ordered? I mean, that type of stuff.
I don't know what the lead time is on ordering as far as getting in place. We have to have another cell ready to go for waste in 2 years. If our tonnage goes up, it's going to be sooner. And we got a full year of construction to get that right, at least a full year. I'm not sure we can get 2C done in here. We had the consultants in last week and went over 2C. That is the one that is farthest east. There at the landfill, right behind the said pond, or right next to the said pond. We're going to have some bore samples done. We don't know if it's 10 feet of soils we have to take out to get to the old landfill. We have to build that section up with waste, come in and recap it, then bring the liner in along with building the berm. That's what I said, and not to mention there's a box culvert that goes in there that's probably going to be another $300,000 or $400,000. This cell coming up is extremely expensive and time consuming.
Yeah, I guess the last statement I'm going to make is, as far as comment about being tone deaf, I've heard clearly from the time to begin, this needs to be as done as economically as possible. And that's what I've tried to accomplish. Many people don't agree with me at this point, but we will research it further.
Okay, if there's nothing else, thank you. Thanks for your input. Anything else, Connie?